So now that I've made selections with my collection strength, it's now time to go over to the resource chain and optimize my resource production. As a new mission operative, you might see a lot of red, and this is just because the resource chain updates hourly. And so you need to wait until the top of the hour in order for the first resource production run to happen. And that will update some of these values so that you can really see where you're at. But before that happens, there's plenty we can do. So we're going to walk through the first settings you can start tweaking even before that first resource run happens. The breakdown of this page is two parts. The top part is a chart that shows you your Marcia production and Marcia efficiency, which we'll get into later. And then this part is the resource production. The red means that you're net negative in resource production. And when we start tweaking settings, you'll start to see some green, which means net positive. And so your ultimate goal with the resource chain is to produce net positive resources, and in particular, the most valuable net positive resources, as well as Marcia. So we're gonna go and start tweaking settings. And by doing that, we're gonna start with the editor mode. And this brings up a slider. And the second part of the page is the resource chain view. And this is broken down by item type. So you can see each row as an item. And within each row here, you have the item name. This is the breakdown, the percentage breakdown of production for this item, and you can tweak it so that it automatically converts the resources into Marcia, or you can go all the way up to producing the direct resource for that item. Now, this is important if you want to really maximize Marcia specifically, and if you want to do that, you need to be probably over towards the left, but you can see if you produce too much Marcia from each item, you won't have the resources to go all the way through your resource chain. And if an item doesn't have the inputs that it needs, it actually won't produce any resources. So you have to be careful to not over index on Marcia production. And then as we move to the right, this area of the chart shows my running totals, my running balances of each resource. And as it moves through the chain, you can see it produces, and this number goes up. Sometimes it will go down if it's consuming those resources. So we're going to start by basically making sure that we get our chart looking as green as possible. And by doing that, by moving these sliders over to produce more resources, you'll start to see that it happens. And so I'm just going to go through. As a beginner, we would suggest moving more towards the right hand of the sliders. This is going to mean that you're producing more resources and have a higher likelihood of operating an efficient resource chain to start. And as you get more advanced, you might tweak some of these to become a little bit more towards Marcia production. So I just went all the way over to 75% for each item in terms of resource production versus Marcia production. And you can see that now my chart has a lot more green on it. And so if I go down to my mega power reactor, you can see that this changes the chart a lot. And I could actually run this at 25% resources, in this case power, and 75% Marcia, and it still is positive. But it really depends on the value of power and if it's worth running Marcia versus producing power. You can see that it seems to be pretty much neutral depending on which setting. My Marcia efficiency isn't going up. So I'm actually going to just go straight to 75% power here. And then once I'm done choosing these slider settings, I'm going to click Apply Changes. And now we've successfully applied those slider settings. So you can now see that they're all producing 75%. And the next step is to wait until the resource run happens, and then we'll go through and tweak these a little bit further. All right, so it's been a few hours and I logged back in to check my resource chain, and you can already see that things are looking a bit different. First of all, the resources in the running balance here are now updating, and you can see I'm starting to accumulate some production, and my chart now has updated numbers to reflect the fact that most everything is running in a optimal way. So that's really good, but we're now going to maximize the efficiency of our resource chain. And to do that, we're going to go to the Marcia part of the page. And this is split up into 3 parts. So the first bar here is the amount of Marcia that my resource chain is producing. So this is 0.03 Marcia hourly. The second bar is if I were to convert all of my net positive resources, so for instance, this 14 power, this 0.3 water, etc. If I were to convert all those to Marcia using the swap, the value of that would be worth 0.09 Marcia. And then this dotted bar up here is if I were to optimize my resource chain, I would get all the way up to 0.15 Marcia. And so that's really where I want to be, because that means my resource chain is running at maximum profitability. So in order to get up there, I'm going to switch on editor mode and get back into my sliders here. And basically I'm going to start going through and tweaking sliders so that my resource chain is still running net positive, but I'm increasing the efficiency. And you can see as I start to change my slider settings, it's actually starting to change the efficiency. My guess is that the power production is what's going to change it. Okay, so that didn't change it too much. And you can see here, the reason why it's changing differently is because each resource has a different market value. So some will change it more than others. And you can also see here, when I change this to run at full Marcia output instead of resource, you can see that now my maintenance building doesn't have enough engineering labor to run successfully. So you have to be careful to not over compensate on slider settings, which would cause your resource chain to stop running efficiently. So this takes a bit of time. What I'm going to do is go ahead and optimize these and then come back. All right, so I've spent a little bit of time and now I have my slider settings optimized, and I'm now running at about 94% efficiency, which is great. And I made a few trade-offs here. Number one is I could get a little bit more efficiency out of some items, but then I'd be running higher deficits in my resource chain, which is fine if you want to continuously manage your surplus or your stockpile of that resource. But over time, this might cause issues because certain things that require water, like the astronauts, might not run efficiently if water starts running out. So that's something I would need to monitor. Right now I have 1.4 water, so I'm good for a while, but I can always look up here and see how many more hours I have remaining of certain resources and stock up on those if I need to. So yeah, 94% is pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and apply the changes. And now I've successfully optimized all the way up to my resource chain now is producing 0.14 Marcia, or the equivalent of 0.14 Marcia. So that's basically 0.11 Marcia hourly, which was up from 0.03 before. And then it looks like an additional 0.03 Marcia from the net positive resources. So I'm basically just 0.01 Marcia shy from a fully efficient resource chain. Now, as I earn resources and Marcia, I can always use those to increase my inventory. And so, for instance, if I wanted to get rid of this water deficit, I could go to the store and purchase some more collection strength of the ice mining rig, which would get me some more water if I chose to produce, change my slider setting to produce some water. So that's one way I can make sure that I'm reducing my deficits and still maintaining a good balance. So with that, we're going to wrap up the resource chain section of the tutorial and move on to the next.